3 for 3 on being fined by the WNBA.
Holy sh**. For this? For the pod? Again?
They didn't like my comments on Paige Becker's.
No.
Sophie Cunningham turned $3,500 in fines into a multi-million-dollar empire while becoming the WNBA's biggest problem, and they brought it entirely on themselves. What started as one hard foul defending Caitlin Clark has snowballed into something the league can't control, a charismatic player with zero fear, unlimited platform access, and absolutely nothing to lose. Smash that like button and drop Spicy Sophie in the comments, because what you're about to see will show you exactly why the WNBA is terrified of this woman and why every fine they throw at her only makes her more powerful.
There's something seriously wrong with how the W enforces their rules. And I know there's already been a big emphasis on referee inconsistencies, but at the end of the day, the quality of referees is on the WNBA too. Because again, I have no idea where the line is. Because on one hand, I kind of get it. It's normal for a league to fine you if you're going to talk bad about the league or the players in the league. Because that happens all the time in the NBA, NFL, and so on. But on the other hand, why does the league not care about its image when players are standing over and cursing out their opponents on the court? Like, where was the enforcement here? Or where was it here? Or where was it when the whole entire league was bullying your star player? And this stuff is happening all the time in the WNBA, but why is it only called on occasion? Which is why fining Sophie Cunningham every time she has a podcast seems kind of crazy, because the WNBA obviously chooses when and when not to enforce.
When Sophie Cunningham joined the Indiana Fever in January 2025, most fans saw her as exactly what the roster needed, a scrappy veteran who could provide some muscle for a team that got bullied all of 2024. But what they got was so much more than that. Sophie didn't just bring toughness, she brought something that had been missing from the Caitlin Clark experience since day one: authentic loyalty from a teammate who understood her value. After watching a full season of Clark getting hammered while teammates stayed silent and coaches made excuses, Sophie immediately made it clear she wasn't playing those games. She called Clark the best thing to happen to the WNBA and meant every word, which instantly made her public enemy #1 with players who spent months trying to diminish Clark's impact.
Is going to push her even more to share her perspectives and share her point of view, and that's going to get her some partnerships, that's going to get her business opportunities, because again, nobody really knows what these players go through unless you're in their position. Unless you're in that position. For those who don't know, she plays for the Indiana Fever. But I love that she is voicing her concerns. I think the only way for change to happen is for you to vocalize what needs to be changed and to have it at the forefront. And she just may be the person to help further push these types of conversations ahead. So listen, let's all support Sophia, watch the first episode. And I'm excited to see what else she's talking about.
But here's where Sophie's story gets interesting, because defending Caitlin wasn't just about basketball loyalty for her. Sophie had watched the Clark phenomenon from Phoenix, seen how the media downplayed her rookie year impact, how refs swallowed their whistles when she got fouled, how Nike dragged their feet on promoting their biggest star. She knew exactly what Clark was facing because she'd witnessed it firsthand from the outside looking in. So when she got traded to Indiana, Sophie came with a mission that went way beyond just playing basketball. She was going to be the enforcer Clark never had, and the voice she never got to use, and the WNBA had no idea what they were about to unleash. The first real glimpse of Savage Sophie came during preseason against the Washington Mystics when rookie Kiki Jefferson took her down with zero hesitation. Sophie popped right back up and made it crystal clear that kind of disrespect wouldn't fly anymore. But that was just the appetizer for what was coming. Because if a rookie could punk a veteran like Sophie without consequences, what chance did Caitlin Clark have in the regular season?
Are not protecting their players. Nobody's going to watch this if you're not protecting your star player. You're not protecting your players, period. But particularly your star players. No one's going to watch this. People are watching it because of Caitlin Clark, and then even more because of Sophie Cunningham. And if you're going to just hang them out to dry, then, good. Nobody's going to watch this anymore because they don't protect their players. It's a worthless organization. They have no idea how to protect their players. But, oh man, they're going to be moan, well, you better pay us the money. For what? You can't even protect your star players that draw the eyeballs. Now nobody's watching. Nobody's going to watch to see the star players sitting out with injuries because of poor treatment and poor officiating on the sides. Nobody's going to watch that.
The refs were already burying their whistles whenever Clark got fouled, And it was obvious the league was going to let the same physical abuse from 2024 continue. Sophie knew she had to send a message that would echo throughout the entire WNBA, and on June 17, 2025, she got her chance. The Commissioner's Cup game between the Fever and Connecticut Sun turned into exactly the kind of situation Sophie had been waiting for. The officials completely lost control of the game, letting players take cheap shots with zero consequences. First, J.J. Sheldon poked Caitlin in the eye during the third quarter. Then, Marina Mabrey leveled her with a body shot that should have been an instant ejection. But instead of protecting their biggest star, the refs gave out some meaningless technicals and let the abuse continue. That's when Sophie Cunningham decided she'd had enough of the league's nonsense and delivered the moment that changed everything. With less than a minute left and the Fever winning by 17 points, Sophie tracked down Sheldon on a drive and wrapped her arms around her neck, pulling her straight to the ground.
That's a flagrant foul. It's a hard foul. But
yeah, I think no question this will get upgraded.
yeah, no question.
It wasn't just a foul, it was a statement that said, "Don't you ever try that garbage again." What happened next was pure chaos and pure catharsis for Caitlin Clark fans everywhere. Sheldon immediately went after Sophie. Lindsay Allen jumped in, and the whole thing turned into a full-scale brawl that ended with 3 ejections and Sophie becoming an overnight sensation. Her jersey sold out in minutes, her social media exploded with millions of new followers, and suddenly everyone was talking about the player who finally stood up for Caitlin Clark. Sophie leaned right into the fame, posting a viral TikTok with the Selena Gomez track that was clearly a wink at the J.J. Sheldon takedown. The message was crystal clear. She wasn't apologizing for anything, and she was just getting started with her war against the WNBA's hypocrisy. But with that instant fame came instant enemies, and the WNBA immediately went into damage control mode. The media slammed Sophie's retaliation while staying completely silent about Mabrey's hit or Sheldon's eye poke on Clark.
Cunningham tweeted about getting fined, basically saying that she thinks it's laughable and that the league probably has bigger issues they should be focusing on. Now, WNBA officiating has faced major scrutiny all season long from some of the league's biggest stars and coaches. You can find a ton of articles about it online where they're all calling for more consistency. One of the more quotable examples came from Angel Reese after the Chicago Sky lost to the Minnesota Lynx on July 6th. Reese said that the officiating has to be fixed. She said, "I don't give a you-know-what if I get fined because that stuff is cheap and I'm tired of this stuff." You get the point. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert addressed the officiating ahead of the All-Star game last weekend. She said that it is something that the league is continuing to work on and that they are on it.
A Change.org petition even popped up demanding Sophie be kicked out of the league for unsportsmanlike conduct because apparently defending your superstar teammate is worse than trying to injure her. The WNBA hit her with a $400 fine, which was honestly laughable considering Sophie was about to make more money from endorsements in a week than most players make in a season. But here's where the league made their biggest mistake, because instead of staying quiet and letting the heat die down, Sophie chose war. Just 5 days after the Sheldon incident, Sophie showed up to a game wearing a Barstool Sports t-shirt featuring herself, Caitlin, and Lexi Hall that was immediately interpreted as a reference to the Fever's 3 white players. Sophie knew exactly how controversial that shirt would be, and she wore it anyway, sending another clear signal about where her loyalty stood. Then on July 1st, she took direct aim at the WNBA's expansion plans, blasting cities like Detroit and Cincinnati and saying nobody was excited to play there. The backlash was immediate and intense, with media members, fans, and league insiders all piling on.
Miss Sophie Cunningham, what is going on with you right now? 2 weeks ago, I was giving you your praises about standing up for your teammate, Caitlin Clark, and calling you the new enforcer of the WNBA. Hell, compare you to D-Mac. And now I go and read that some people are not going to be happy with going to Detroit and Cleveland, the new expansion teams of the WNBA. That just doesn't sit right with me. For one, maybe take a step back and actually visit the city of Detroit to see how much sports related and how much passion we have for our team. Also take some time to educate yourself on the Detroit Shock as well too. Formed in 1998 had a Hall of Famer coach at one point in time, and Nancy Lieberman. The team actually won 3 WNBA championships. How many have the Indiana Fever won? I rest my case.
For a brief moment, Sophie tried to walk it back, but then she realized something important. When you're dealing with the mob, there's no point in backing down. So Sophie did the exact opposite of what everyone expected. Instead of apologizing, she went harder, saying out loud what everyone else was thinking but too scared to admit. She straight up told people she was the one willing to say what the entire league felt about the refs, about expansion, about everything the WNBA didn't want discussed publicly. And then came the fines, which turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to Sophie's brand. On July 18th, she posted a TikTok lip syncing to Sabrina Carpenter, calling the refs stupid and useless. And the post exploded with over 1 million views in hours. The WNBA hit her with a $500 fine, but for Sophie, who was now pulling in endorsement money hand over fist, $500 was literally pocket change.
She literally, when I tell you, y'all, I literally feel like they are just coming for her, because I feel like she should be able to say what she wants to say on her podcast. But that's just me. That's just how I feel. Then they came and then it came an earlier $500 penalty. I guess for a TikTok video, she was mocking the referees and lip singing. That was funny. So now I got a question for y'all. Do you think that she should be able to say what she wants on her own podcast? Or do you feel like, she should just shut it down and, stop bothering them?
2 weeks later, Sophie cranked it up another level by launching her podcast, Show Me Something. And from the very first episode, she didn't hold anything back. This wasn't just another athlete podcast. This was Sophie's platform to expose everything wrong with the WNBA, and she came out swinging at everyone. She revealed that her old Phoenix teammates had locker room conversations about trying to prove Caitlin Clark didn't belong, admitting the abuse was 100% because of who Clark was. She called out the refs for losing control of that Sun game and said Marina Mabrey should have been ejected immediately. She basically confirmed what every Caitlin Clark fan has suspected all along, that the league was allowing systematic abuse of their biggest star. But Sophie wasn't done, because on that same podcast, she dropped a bomb that hit the entire WNBA establishment. She went straight at anyone who tried to argue that Caitlin Clark wasn't the face of the league, calling them dumb as bleep and asking who else could possibly claim that title.
So lads, the WNBA have done it. They have done it. They have officially fined Sophie Cunningham every podcast episode. They have fined her because Sophie Cunningham has been fined. I'm not joking. She's been fined for a TikTok. She's been fined now, I think, for the 3rd time for a podcast. I think Sophie Cunningham might be the all-time leader in fines in the WNBA.
She said the quiet part out loud, that everyone agreed with her, they were just too afraid to say it publicly. Then she turned her fire on the refs again, essentially daring the league to fine her by saying $500 wouldn't do bleep to stop her from calling out their incompetence. The WNBA responded exactly like Sophie predicted, hitting her with a $1,500 fine for the podcast comments, which only proved her point about how desperate they were to silence her. 3 days later, Sophie revealed she'd been hit with another fine, this time for comments about Paige Buchers getting special treatment from the refs. She didn't sugarcoat anything, saying Paige was getting every whistle while Caitlin was still getting hacked with no protection deep into her 2nd year. It was the kind of obvious double standard that fans had noticed for months, but Sophie was the only one willing to call it out publicly. By August, she was officially 3 for 3 on WNBA fines, racking up over $2,000 in penalties while making millions from her newfound fame and platform.
The amount of traction that episode was getting, folks were saying that she could pay that off just from her YouTube monetization. And so this is just interesting, because I've said before that I really wish the WNBA as well as other sports leagues would lean in to the athlete-owned media platforms, because fans are a lot more interested in hearing the perspective of people who actually play the sport than just spectators and people on the outside. So the fact that they are penalizing her for showcasing her frustrations, even though tons of players have done this, you know, post-game interviews or just talked about it on the internet in general, is very interesting.
But then tragedy struck on August 18th when Sophie suffered a season-ending MCL tear during a collision with Connecticut's Bria Hartley. The injury should have been the end of her war with the WNBA, at least for 2025, but instead it only made her more dangerous. Without games to focus on, Sophie doubled down on her podcast and social media content, using her recovery time to build an even bigger platform. She kept calling out Skip Bayless for his ridiculous theories about Caitlyn's injuries, kept exposing the league's hypocrisy, and kept saying what everyone else was thinking but afraid to voice. Here's what makes Sophie Cunningham the WNBA's worst nightmare. She's everything they can't control wrapped up in one charismatic package. She's got a platform that reaches millions of fans, endorsement money that makes their fines meaningless, and zero fear of the consequences for speaking truth to power. Every time they try to silence her, she gets louder. Every fine they throw at her only proves her point about the league's priorities. She's built a brand around being the one person willing to defend Caitlin Clark and call out the WNBA's failures. And that brand is worth more than anything the league can offer her.
She has turned herself into a top 5 most talked about player in the WNBA. And can I tell you, I am loving the clips that are coming out of this podcast. There's just so much fascinating elements of her that make her this really alpha, really strong, but really beautiful, spicy villain. And I think she kind of likes being the villain.
The entire league can talk about Caitlyn, but Sophie can't talk to Paige. No. And that's the funniest thing, is that Angel Reese can say some people have a special whistle about Caitlin Clark in a public press conference. And it's selective fining. That's the problem. Like, Kelsey Plum has not been fined this year, and Kelsey Plum has literally just stopped entire press conferences to complain about the referees. Apparently Stephanie White didn't get fined when Marina Mabrey knocked Caitlyn on her ass, and then Sophie Cunningham took down JC Sheldon. Apparently Stephanie White didn't get, and Mazian did not get fined for both of them going mad at the referee.
Sophie represents everything the WNBA establishment fears most. A player who understands her value outside the league's control and isn't afraid to use it. She's shown other players that you don't have to accept the league's narrative, that you can build your own platform and tell your own truth. She's proven that defending Caitlin Clark isn't just the right thing to do, it's also incredibly profitable and popular with fans. Most importantly, she's demonstrated that the WNBA's punishment system only works on players who need the league more than the league needs them, and Sophie clearly doesn't fit that category. The truth is, the WNBA created this monster entirely by themselves through years of allowing systematic abuse of their biggest star while punishing anyone who dared to speak up about it. They turned Sophie Cunningham from a role player into a household name by making her the villain for doing what they should have done all along, protecting Caitlin Clark. But what makes Sophie's rise even more dangerous for the league is how perfectly she's timed everything to maximum effect, turning each controversy into content gold while building an empire that exists completely outside their control.
Happily pay those fines. I think they're only fining like $200 or something. It's something crazy. Like, Sophie Cunningham is making millions this year. Players don't get fined for speaking on one another, but every single player in the history of pro basketball has criticized officiating and fined for it. No, she keeps doing the same thing, getting fined for it. She literally said Paige is a good whistle. That is what she said. She said Paige, the Paige fans, my God.
What the WNBA completely failed to understand is that Sophie Cunningham wasn't just some random role player looking for attention. This is a woman who earned her black belt in Taekwondo at age 6, who was the first female in history to score points for her high school football team, who comes from a family of farmers that taught her how to work hard and work together. When she decided to go to war with the league, she brought a level of strategic thinking and fearlessness that caught everyone off guard. Sophie knew exactly what she was doing when she started this campaign, and every move has been calculated to build maximum leverage while exposing the WNBA's hypocrisy. The genius of Sophie's approach becomes clear when you look at how she's positioned herself in the marketplace of ideas around women's basketball. She's not anti-women's basketball, she's anti-WNBA establishment. She's not trying to tear down the sport, she's trying to tear down the corrupt system that's holding it back. This distinction is crucial because it allows her to maintain credibility with fans who love the game while still going nuclear on the league's leadership. Sophie understands that Caitlin Clark's popularity has created a massive audience of new fans who don't have any loyalty to the old guard, and she's speaking directly to them with a message they desperately want to hear. But here's where Sophie's strategy gets really sophisticated, because she's not just building a platform, she's building a movement. Every time she gets fined, she turns it into content that reinforces her message about WNBA corruption. Every time the league tries to silence her, she uses it as proof that they're more concerned with protecting their image than protecting their players. She's essentially turned the WNBA's punishment system into her own marketing machine, where every fine becomes evidence that she's over the target. It's brilliant manipulation of the news cycle, and the league keeps falling for it every single time. The numbers tell the whole story of how completely Sophie has outmaneuvered the WNBA. Before the J.J. Sheldon incident, she was a career role player averaging 8 points per game with minimal social media following. After that one moment of defending Caitlin Clark, her Instagram jumped from thousands of followers to over 1 million practically overnight. Her TikTok exploded even faster. Her jersey became one of the top sellers in the league, and suddenly, she was getting endorsement offers from companies that had never heard of her 6 months earlier. The WNBA thought they were punishing her with fines, but they were actually giving her free publicity that would have cost millions to achieve through traditional marketing. Meanwhile, the contrast between how Sophie and other players handled WNBA criticism couldn't be more stark. Most players who get fined by the league immediately apologize, stay quiet for a while, and hope the controversy dies down. Sophie does the exact opposite, doubling down on every statement and using each fine as an opportunity to go even harder at the league. When they fined her $500 for the TikTok, she basically said it wouldn't do anything to stop her. When they upped it to $1,500 for the podcast, she said it was just the beginning. By the time they hit her with the third fine for the Paige Bueckers comments, she was openly laughing about being 3 for 3 on WNBA penalties. This fearless approach has made Sophie incredibly dangerous to the league's messaging machine because she's proven that their threats are meaningless to someone with options. The WNBA's entire system relies on players being financially dependent and therefore controllable, but Sophie has built an independent revenue stream that makes their punishments irrelevant. She's making more money from her platform and endorsements than she ever did as just a basketball player, which means the league has zero leverage over her behavior. Every fine they throw at her just becomes another data point in her argument that the WNBA is a corrupt organization more concerned with silencing critics than addressing problems. What makes this situation even more infuriating for the league is how Sophie has managed to stay technically within bounds while still causing maximum chaos. She's never accused anyone of criminal behavior, never used language that would get her suspended, never crossed lines that would give them grounds for severe punishment. Instead, she's used humor, sarcasm, and clever wordplay to say exactly what she means while maintaining plausible deniability. The Selena Gomez TikTok after the Sheldon incident was perfect. Everyone knew what she meant, but she never explicitly said anything that violated league rules. The Tres Leches shirt was genius-level trolling that got the exact reaction she wanted while giving her cover to claim it was just about basketball. But perhaps the most brilliant aspect of Sophie's campaign is how she's managed to align herself perfectly with the Caitlin Clark fan base, which represents the most valuable audience in women's basketball. These are fans who are new to the WNBA, don't care about respecting traditional power structures, and are absolutely furious about how Clark has been treated. Sophie positioned herself as their voice inside the league, saying all the things they've been screaming about officiating, media bias, and systematic abuse. By doing this, she's essentially made herself untouchable because attacking her means attacking the fan base that's driving all the WNBA's growth. The psychological warfare Sophie has waged against her critics is equally impressive. When Sun fans tried to use her injury against her by bringing up the Sheldon incident, she fired right back without hesitation. When Skip Bayless tried to diminish her role by saying she was taking advantage of Caitlin Clark, she called his analysis garbage and exposed his ridiculous conspiracy theories. Sophie has shown that she's not intimidated by media figures, opposing fans, or anyone else who wants to test her resolve. She's consistently demonstrated that she'll meet any challenge head-on and usually come out looking better than her critics. The ripple effects of Sophie's rebellion are already being felt throughout the league, because other players are starting to see that speaking out doesn't have to be career suicide. Her success has shown that there's actually a huge market for players willing to tell the truth about WNBA problems, and that fans will reward authenticity over corporate-approved messaging. This is terrifying for the league because Sophie has essentially created a playbook for how to build an independent platform that's bigger than basketball. Other players are watching her success and starting to ask why they should stay quiet about issues they care about. Even Sophie's podcast has become a masterclass in how to build influence while staying just controversial enough to generate buzz. The show isn't just random athlete chatter, it's strategic content designed to keep her in the headlines while advancing her broader message about WNBA reform. Every episode contains at least one quotable moment that gets picked up by sports media, ensuring she stays relevant even during the off-season. The format gives her complete editorial control, so she can say exactly what she wants without worrying about being edited or taken out of context by hostile media. The timing of Sophie's rise couldn't have been better for maximum impact because it coincided perfectly with the peak of Caitlin Clark's popularity and the WNBA's desperate attempts to capitalize on it. Just as casual fans were getting interested in women's basketball for the first time, here comes Sophie providing insider commentary that confirms all their suspicions about league corruption. She's essentially become the translator between what fans see happening and what's actually happening behind the scenes, which makes her incredibly valuable to an audience that's trying to understand why their favorite player keeps getting abused. Looking ahead, Sophie's injury might have ended her 2025 season, but it's only made her more dangerous long-term because now she has unlimited time to build her platform without basketball distractions. She's already hinted at expanding her media presence, potentially adding video content, bringing on bigger guests, and maybe even launching additional shows. The WNBA thought they were getting a break when she got hurt, but they're actually dealing with someone who now has even more time to focus on content creation and league criticism. The most terrifying prospect for the WNBA is that Sophie's success will inspire other players to follow her playbook, creating a whole generation of athletes who refuse to stay quiet about league problems. Imagine if 5 or 6 players started podcasts like Sophie's, all calling out officiating, all defending Caitlin Clark, all building independent platforms that make league fines irrelevant. The WNBA would completely lose control of their narrative, which is exactly why they've been trying so desperately to make an example of Sophie before her approach spreads. But it might already be too late, because Sophie Cunningham has fundamentally changed the relationship between players and the league by proving that you don't have to accept their version of reality. She's shown that standing up for what's right can actually be more profitable than staying quiet, that fans will reward authenticity over obedience, and that the WNBA's punishment system only works on people who need them more than they need the player. Sophie clearly doesn't fit that category anymore, which makes her absolutely untouchable and absolutely unstoppable. The bottom line is that Sophie Cunningham has turned herself into the WNBA's worst nightmare, not through luck or accident, but through a calculated campaign of strategic rebellion that's generated millions of dollars while exposing systemic problems the league desperately wants to hide. Every fine they've thrown at her has only made her bigger, every criticism has only made her stronger, and every attempt to silence her has only given her more material for content. She's built an empire on the foundation of defending Caitlin Clark and calling out WNBA hypocrisy, and that empire is only going to keep growing. The league created this monster through years of corruption and incompetence, and now they have to live with the consequences of someone who's not afraid to tell the truth about what they've become.